What it do, y'all? It's your boy D Sly, coming to you with another reflection from the Sag Nasty If Anybody Asks Me podcast. I'm trying to speak slower and enunciate because I can just hear myself mumbling, talking fast on the podcast. Anyways, so I'll try to do better to speak clearly and slower like people do on other platforms, but it's not natural to me, y'all. It's not natural. So this week we've been going through Chrissy Dickey's story, Polka Dots and Bows. We can see how through each perspective we can see the slow creep of anxiety enter into Chrissy's life. Some things she was aware of in regard to the anxiety, and other things after reflection she realized were part of her anxiety. Anxiety is a very interesting subject for me because, as we know, it's a very popular subject in today's world, rightly so. There's countless people who suffer from anxiety. The way I look at anxiety, however, is, and I heard Cesar Millan, if you guys know him, Cesar Millan is the dog whisperer. I think it was Cesar Millan. He was talking about this. Anxiety is not necessarily a negative thing, but it's also not a positive thing. Anxiety is a neutral thing. For me, it's energy. The issue when we suffer from anxiety is when we have no proper outlet for that anxiety. For example, hopefully something productive. If you don't have a productive outlet for your anxiety, usually you'll turn to something destructive, something not beneficial for you. So as you can imagine, productive ways to deal with your anxiety would be like usually exercise or studying, or sometimes you can get lost in your work. But all those can be negative too sometimes, right? You can exercise too much, you get sick. You can neglect other parts of your life because you poured your anxiety into work. And then you just find out you might be rich, but you're alone. But anxiety is energy. I think it goes back to the early human beings. They were forced to just work and expend so much more energy than I think that we do today. You wake up at the crack of dawn and you got to get into the fields or into the forest to hunt, and you just do that all day, and you just work and work and work and expend so much energy just for your survival. But in today's modern world, we don't have to expend that much energy, but our biological makeup still has that energy within us. And even worse probably is that a lot of the energy that we might spend physically that would help us deal with our anxiety is actually spent digitally. And I said that kind of funny, digitally. Anyways, we spend that energy only in a digital platform, and so our bodies don't get the necessary exercise. The necessary nutrients we might get in our diet is also lacking. And then you're left with this big clump of energy, and what do you do with it? And a lot of people end up anxious with that. And it doesn't just stop at physical activity, it's also emotional. Some kind of trauma happens in our life, and we need to exercise that trauma, not in the way of like physical activity exercise, but more like exercise a demon. You need to process that trauma, and a lot of times we're not given productive ways to deal with that trauma, and then it kind of just adds to the anxiety. I won't tell that part of the story, but I am getting certified in something that's related to this, so I'm not just kind of speaking out of my butt on this. Anyways, so I hope you're following along, because I think there's just so many of us, including myself, who have had to deal with anxiety, who've had to deal with trauma, and just trying to make something out of your life. And I think when you look at Chrissy's story, it really can inspire us, but it also can make us feel a little bit more understood with the struggles that we might be going through too. I just applaud her and everyone who's entered the podcast to share their stories. I think it's kind of underestimated what we're doing here at Sag Nasty. If anybody asked me, these stories would otherwise be lost. Yo, what happened to Chrissy? She fell off, but instead, here we have an opportunity to hear the stories, sometimes to give flowers to people while they're still here, instead of losing track of them and just kind of letting their story get lost. So I think that this is really a really cool opportunity that we can document some of these stories. And we're not famous people, we're not celebrities, we're not going to have any documentaries about us or biographies written, but here we are having an opportunity to let our stories be heard still too, because I think our stories are just as important, and a lot of times they are very parallel with stories of anyone else who might be like a celebrity or something like that. So I think it's really cool that we have this opportunity to share the stories. It reminds me of my old neighbor when I moved to Westdale. When I moved from Sherwood to Westdale when I was in 3rd grade, he lived 2 doors down from me at the townhouses. And he was basically my first friend there, if I can remember correctly, even before I met Steve, who was actually his neighbor later. That's why, Steve didn't live there at first. So the only kid who lived in the townhouses at that time close to me was this guy. It was him and his sister and his mother. I think she was a single mother. His sister was beautiful, but I was very young. But she was super beautiful, I remember. And even as we got older, she was still remained beautiful. I think even to today, she's really hot. So anyways, we were good friends, but not too long after I met him, he moved down River Road, probably about 2 miles away, maybe more, on bike. Especially if we went through the road, it would take longer, but if we took a shortcut through the fields and the forest, we could get there a little faster. But one time I got my bike stuck in a patch of bushes, a thicket, and it's a kind of funny story in my family because I missed a sports banquet because of that. My mom said, "Where were you? Why are you so late? And why are your clothes all torn? And why are you so dirty?" And I was scared of being in trouble because I knew I was late, and all I could say was, I got stuck in the shortcut." And my mom just bust out laughing. "The shortcut? What are you talking about?" And so we always say that joke in my family if we're late for something. "Where have you been?" "I got stuck in the shortcut." But anyways, in regard to my neighbor, he moved over there, and we still visited him sometimes by bike. But as time went on, we kind of just grew apart, and he graduated from Heritage, which I actually don't even remember him in high school, which is kind of crazy when he used to be my best friend all the way back in 3rd grade. And shortly after graduation, he went off to military. He got engaged, and this is where the story gets a little strange, is that it seems like while he was deployed out in Iraq, experienced a lot of crazy stuff. And I don't remember correctly, but what I heard was perhaps his fiance had met another man, and maybe she was going to leave him, or I don't know, maybe it was his best friend or something like that. But sadly, by 23 years old, he took his own life. And the reason I bring up this story is because, for me, that story matters. And it's kind of sad that because he's not a celebrity or something like that, that story gets lost. And yeah, I wish I did know the details better, and I don't mean to do any dishonor to his story by not giving the details right or anything like that. But he went all the way and defended our country, and then he comes home and what do you do with that energy? He had no productive way to deal with that energy, and the next thing you know, he's taking his own life. And for me, it's, his story matters, and I think that it would have been nice to have that documented while he was still here, that we could give his flowers while he's still here. So I think for this podcast to be able to document these stories and give people their flowers while they're still here, I think maybe that's underestimated, what we're trying to do here with the podcast and what people are doing as they bravely volunteer to be on the podcast. And I got a message the other day about someone wanting to start their own podcast, someone from our class, our graduating class, and he was asking for some advice about basically some information about what I did to get the podcast started. Hey, it's a free country, you can do what you want, but in regard to giving any information about what I'm trying to do, this is all we got, is the reflection. You can follow along, and if you're inspired to do that, be inspired. But I'm new. I don't know what I'm doing. I'm just following my heart. So if you want some advice about starting your own podcast or something like that, I could only just say, follow your heart. I don't even know if that's good advice, but that's what I'm trying to do. I wish I could even have more knowledge behind that, but as of now, that's all I can really do. So we're gonna keep going until we can't go no more. We're all looking at the same thing. Let me enunciate that. We are all looking at the same thing. We are all looking at the same thing. To this day, if anybody asks me, this is what I tell them. Sag nasty. I'm out.